Welcome to the Lovestead.
Hello, welcome back to Lady Lovestead Reads. My name is Jessica, my pronouns are she, her, and this is my vlog. I had originally filmed this footage earlier, but I lost it, so I'm refilming the intro footage here. This vlog is just a weekly vlog focusing on literary fiction. The first book that I'm reading is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors, and this is a book about a relationship between a 20-something-year-old artist and her 40-something-year-old husband, who is an ad executive, and it's about, those complicated relationship dynamics. It's about dysfunctions within families and how those dysfunctions follow us into our relationships. So that's the opening to this vlog. It started on Friday. It started on Friday, July 29th, and enjoy. I am at the barn, but going to start this while I wait for them to bring the horses in for the night. So, I always wait in my car because they don't really have any chairs or anything. That's neither here nor there. So, I had a writing lesson on Monday, and there was a deer just outside the arena, and my horse freaked, and she spooked. And for those of you who know what a cattle cutting horse is and what they do, they're doing that move. So she did a bunch of those moves. She tried to bolt, and then she sidestepped and rammed my leg into a fence, and it was quite a scene. So today we're just going to regroup and do some groundwork, which is where you, for those of you who aren't equestrian people, it's where you work with your horse on the ground. So you're on the ground, you have your horse on a lead line, or sometimes off a lead line in an arena, and it's where you see them do lunging and that kind of thing. So we're just stepping back today, and we're going to do some groundwork tonight, kind of regroup after Monday night fiasco. It took a while for her to chill and calm back down, and I actually had to get off of her and do groundwork with her before she calmed down. So I have a group lesson on Sunday, so hopefully tonight will be kind of a good, I guess regroup is the word I'm looking for, going into that group lesson on Sunday. But anyway, while I'm waiting for them to bring the horses in, I don't like to disturb their evening routine. I could go out and just go get Miss Doll, but I don't like to disturb their evening routine. So, once they bring everybody in, we'll do some grooming and some groundwork, and while I wait for them to do that, I am reading. I'm home from the barn, and I'm making a recipe that I saw on Instagram. So it's just brie cut up into chunks, grape tomatoes, basil, fresh basil, some garlic, olive oil, salt, and pepper all tossed together. And then I'm cooking fettuccine noodles. And apparently you just put once the noodles are cooked, you put the hot drained noodles directly in there. You don't have to cook this or anything. Just put the noodles directly in, and it melts the cheese as you kind of stir it together. So we'll see how this turns out. Yeah, I can't stir one-handed. So the brie sort of melted and sort of didn't. So there's a little chunk of it there. But I mean, it tastes pretty good. morning. It's technically not morning. It's 11:58 a.m. So I mean, I guess technically still morning for the next 2 minutes, but anyway. It is Monday, August 1st. Happy August if you celebrate. I'm making myself an iced coffee. I was fully and totally influenced by Liv at Olivia Reads a Latte to get an espresso machine. Yes. Well, I mean, influenced by Liv and also just like the exorbitant amount of work that I have to do and and the amount of goals I'm trying to achieve and like serotonin that I need in my life. So yeah, making my iced coffee. I am eating some of the apple bread that I made last night. It is a Dutch apple bread recipe, and I put a link to the recipe in my Discord. So if you're not, sorry, I've got hairs like in my face that are bothering me. If you're not in my Discord, feel free to join. It's a pretty chill, laid back area. You can, chat as much as you want or as much as you don't want, but it's where we like keep track of the BookTube Blitz stuff, which is wrapped. Since it is August 1st, I will be getting together all of the BookTube Blitz data today. And then I'll start working on making little slips for the winning team so that I can draw names for the 3 folks who won a book. And get all that taken care of. So that's on the agenda for today. But anyway, as I was saying, that's my Discord is where we do all of the like BookTube Blitz stuff. And then if you are wanting to join the Middle Grade Appreciation Society, those discussions and updates and things happen there as well. So there is a link in my description box that's always there and it's always open. So feel free to join if you would like. So this weekend, what did we do this weekend? This weekend, Saturday, I don't think I really updated a whole lot through the weekend, which tends to happen for me because I like to just enjoy the weekend, especially when I have an actual weekend and I'm not having to work, like was the case with this weekend. So Saturday, I just worked on some house projects. If you couldn't tell by like the stacks of books and the mess behind me, I'm still trying to figure out like my home aesthetic and to get things organized and decluttered and set up the way it was. I have not been in this house a super long time. Well, it's super long comparatively speaking, but it's not super long for me. And like, I'm still trying to figure out like where to put things to help with like the flow of my life and to make it both functional and pretty. So I worked on a couple of different house projects on Saturday and did some reading, and then Brendan and I just like watched baseball and hung out. Pi was also there. And then Sunday, yesterday, I went to a park with a friend of mine and we had coffee and like a little catch-up session. And the park is like so gorgeous this time of year. The park is called Prairie Lakes Park, and it's like got like a whole, I mean, you'll see it in the B-roll, but it's got like some prairie land in it, and prairie is like my favorite. Like, it's so beautiful, and like all of the wildlife is so gorgeous, and like it's so important to have those natural habitats in Iowa to support like the wildlife that are dying out because of urban sprawl and industrialization and all of that crap. So anyway, we went to that park, and then I was supposed to have like a writing clinical, like a group lesson that we do on Sundays out at the ranch, but I was having some car problems, so that didn't happen because I didn't want to It's like a 20-minute drive out there, which isn't bad, but it's also not good if you're having car trouble. So I didn't go to that. And instead, I stayed home and I watched some booktube and I read a bit. I also worked on my bullet journal for August because I just really want to start the month like fresh. You know what I mean? Like a clean slate, a fresh start. And like setting up my bullet journal sort of helps me with that mindset, if you will. So the plan for today is I need to get all of the BookTube Lit stuff put together, tallied and totaled and all of that. I would like to film the final update video tomorrow because I don't go back to work until Wednesday. So I'd like to get it filmed tomorrow. And then I am working on, I'm taking a class on, it's a long story. Maybe I'll tell you in a different clip, but taking a class, so I'm going to do some homework. It's not a bad story, it's a good story, but I'm going to write pie. So I'm going to do some homework, and then I've got to edit a vlog, and I have to start prepping my August wrap-up video. At 3 o'clock today, I'm taking my car in for a service to try to figure out what's going on with it. And then while I'm there, I'll probably read more. And then, depending on what happens with my car, I may or may not have a writing lesson tonight. So, okay, apple bread has been consumed. Now let's chat about Cleopatra and Frankenstein. And while I do that, I'm going to actually be touching up my nails. We're just a multitasking dream team here, you and I. So Cleopatra and Frankenstein so far is pretty interesting. It's kind of been a middle of the road read for me. I'm on page 150. And it is about this relationship between Cleo and Frank. And Cleo is a young artist. She's like in her 20s. Frank is in his 40s, and he's like, and he works in advertising and marketing, and he's like a big hot shot in the field and has a marketing company in New York, and they live in New York. And it's just about their relationship and all of their peripheral relationships as well. So a lot of the side characters get their own like chapters, and most of it is told from third person point of view, like third person limited specifically. But then at about 100 pages in or so, a new character pops up, and her name is Eleanor, and she's a new hire at Frank's agency, and she gets chapters that are from first person point of view, which is totally different from the other characters. They're all third person point of view. So then it makes you wonder, like, who is really the protagonist here? And was all of the story up to that point just set up for Eleanor? I don't really know. So those of you who have read this book, tell me what you think about that switch and point of view where Eleanor is in first person and everybody else is third person limited. And what do you think that means, and what did that do for your reading experience for this book? For me, I adore Eleanor. I think she is such an interesting character. And one of the things that's happening with Eleanor's segments is that they're told in like these little snippets where it'll just be like a paragraph and then there's a break. And then maybe there's one sentence and a break. And then maybe a larger section and then a break. So it's like almost told in these little vignettes. And I really like that as a reader. And as someone who is also a writer, it's really intrigued me as well. Because I think it might be something that would work for my writing style and the way that my brain works when I sit down to write fiction. If not for like the final product, maybe even just the drafting stage of writing something. It's really unique, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I would read a whole book in that style, to be perfectly honest. So Eleanor is new at this advertising agency, and she and Frank kind of have some tension going on, if you know what I mean. Like they're spending a lot of time together and they're getting to know each other and they're talking about things that aren't really appropriate to be talking about at work, all of that. So you're kind of wondering at this point, at least I'm kind of wondering if he's going to have an affair with Eleanor, and what's going on with that. And Cleo and Frank, I would compare them to like their relationship. Honestly, I would compare them to F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda Fitzgerald. The way that it's like they love each other so deeply and intensely, and they're both like these super creative types who also have a lot of baggage and a lot of issues. And like F. Scott was an alcoholic, just like Frank is an alcoholic, and Cleo is an artist, just like Zelda was an artist. They spend time in France, which is a lot like the story that F. Scott wrote, Tender is the Night, which sets place in France. They go, like Frank and Cleo go on their honeymoon in the south of France. And the vibes of that section is so much like Tender is the Night, by F. Scott Fitzgerald, if you've read it. So I don't know if that is intentional, but it is like a connection that I'm making as I read it, which reading is amazing, isn't it? The way that you can connect these stories, or you can connect your personal experiences, or all of these things that a book triggers in your brain is just phenomenal. It's so amazing. Reading is amazing. So that's where I'm at with this story. And one of the things that I wanted to chat with you about is this concept of triggers in literature. And before I talk about this too much, I do want to preface it and say that this is stuff that applies only to me. I am not attempting to speak for anyone but myself. I'm not trying to prescribe anything. I'm not trying to be a counselor. I'm not trying to work as a mental health advocate here. I'm not saying that the way that you experience or deal with triggers is wrong, or anybody else deals with triggers is wrong. This is just about me, okay? It's not about anyone else, and I have no judgment, really no investment in how other people deal with triggers, right? You do what you want. It doesn't matter to me. But something that I've been thinking about with triggers in books. Okay, so let me step back just a little bit. In this book, Cleo, at least what we've seen of Cleo's family, whoo, they're a hot mess. And that was pretty triggering for me because a lot of the issues that she's dealing with are things that I've dealt with in my own family. And then Frank is very clearly to me an alcoholic, even though they haven't outright like stated it. The book hints at, yeah, he's got a drinking problem, but he is an alcoholic. And I was in a relationship with someone, I was engaged to them, and they were the same kind of alcoholic that Frank is, where they're a functioning alcoholic, but when they get drunk, like, and they're drunk at home a lot, that kind of thing. And it was a very traumatizing experience for me. And like I did years of counseling and whatever. So Frank is doing all of these things that my ex used to do, where, for perfect example, is they have lunch with Cleo's parents. And everybody at that lunch orders like an iced tea or, something non-alcoholic, something that was pretty normal to order for a lunch. And Frank is like, should I order alcohol? Shouldn't I? And then he's like, screw it, I'm going to go ahead and order a mixed drink. So he orders a drink. And then Cleo's parents are like, oh, drinking at lunch. Oh my gosh. That happened to me. Okay? We were at like a dinner or a breakfast or something like that with my parents, where it's not a typical time of day where it would be appropriate to order alcohol. And my ex was like, beer. And everybody there was like, okay, he's getting a beer at this time of day, And like, that was really triggering for me to read that scene. Just all these little things that Frank and my ex overlap on. Okay, so I've got those triggers with the ex. I've got the triggers with Cleo's family. But I've been thinking a lot about triggers. Because when you're dealing with trauma, one of the things that is recommended for healing from trauma is a process called exposure therapy, where you expose yourself to the trauma in a healthy way, like by remembering it or reading about it, right? Not like going back into the situation, but like in a counseling setting, for example, they would ask you to talk about the exact situation that happened, okay? To relive it. And the goal of that is that you work through some of your cognitive distortions around what happened. You work through like any self-blame or just anything that's causing that to be such a traumatic reaction in your body still. So you kind of unpiece it as you talk through it, or piece it apart as you talk through it. And the goal is that eventually you can be exposed to a memory of that trauma, or you can be exposed to a trigger and not have a traumatic reaction anymore because you've healed that part of yourself. Like, you can still recognize it as like problematic, but it's not going to like trigger a panic attack or anything like that, because that indicates healing. So for me, when I read a book like this where there are triggers, I think that initially I've been influenced a lot by the bookish community, to just set the book aside and not continue reading it, and just, it triggered me, we're done kind of thing. But I don't know that for me that is the healthiest approach, actually. I don't think that discomfort is a bad thing. And for me, I think that, again, and this is just for me, it's not applying this to anyone else, but for me, like, reading about a trigger in a book is a safe space to work through that trauma. And when I read something and I'm like, ooh, that triggers me, that's a signal to me that is a place within myself that is unhealed, and I can do some work around it. So in a sense, I'm actually quite thankful for some of the triggers that come up as I read, because it shows me what I need to keep working on. And I think that eventually I'll be able to read through these. Like, I'll be able to read a story of an alcoholic and it won't trigger me into feeling unsafe. You know what I mean? It'll be like, ugh, I don't like that, but it won't trigger that physiological reaction that indicates that that's still an area that I need to work on and work on healing. That is my hot take on triggers. Now, I do think that there are triggers out there that, like, for me, again, speaking for me, that I just don't like reading about. Like, and it's not necessarily because of a past trauma. So for my one and only like thing that I don't like reading about is animal abuse. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't like reading about, right? You know, I'm not going to read about a child getting abused and enjoy that, but I can read it without like being so disturbed by it that I have to walk away, right? I can still be absorbed in the story, and I can still put the pieces together of what's happening in this story, even though I hate what's happening to the child, for example, okay? I don't know if this is making me come across as like a callous, cruel person or not. Anyway, like, the one thing that I really cannot read about, that I just dislike reading about, and that will never sit well with me, and that will always pull me out of a story and kind of make me uninterested in finishing because I'll be too worried about there being another scene of it in the future, is like animal torture and animal cruelty. And for me, that's because, like, my animals are my life. Like, they are absolutely everything to me. They are why I have a job. They are why I get up in the morning, right? And I can see that for other folks, there might be things like that, you know, where it's not necessarily linked to a past trauma, but it's just something that they're just not on board with reading about for whatever reason within their personal like value system or their personal situation. And so for me, that would just be animal cruelty. But I think all those other triggers that I find in a book that are connected to past trauma for me, it actually creates like a healing space and a safe space to work through it. And I don't hear that getting talked about a lot when it comes to triggers in books. Actually, I don't think I've heard anybody talk about that when it comes to triggers in books, as seeing triggers as opportunities for healing instead of just like closing the book and walking away. And again, I absolutely understand why for some folks that's a necessity. But for me, as I said, a lot of the triggers that create discomfort for me are more opportunities for just be like, hey, I still need to work on that. Rather than being like, ugh, I can't keep reading this book. I don't know. Does that make sense? And do any of you relate to this? Is this something that you've heard of? Is this something that you've thought about? Let me know down below, because like I think that this is an interesting discussion to have around triggers in general. So let me know down below. And now that this clip is like 15,000 years long, I'm going to go and get on with my day. And bye.
Oh, buddy. Good boy. Happy Tuesday. I just got home from taking care of the horses out at the barn, cleaned all their stalls, and then, yeah, it's been a busy day actually. I picked up my rental from the rental company this morning, and then Brandon and I booked a hotel for an upcoming trip that we're going to be taking, and that was actually quite difficult because it was really hard to find like an affordable place to stay. And like we even looked at Airbnbs and things like that, and there just was very little. It was like slim pickings, because it was like we either had to pay like $200 or more a night for a room, or we could get an Airbnb for 175 plus roommates we don't know, right? So we decided to opt to avoid the roommate situation and just like barf up the cash and book a hotel, because it wasn't I was shocked at how close the Airbnb prices were to the actual hotel prices. Like the Airbnb would be like $211 a night, and the hotel would be like $223. Like I thought Airbnb was supposed to be really affordable, and it really just isn't, for at least where we're going. Which I will vlog it. I'm not going to say when or where we're going because internet safety. But I will be vlogging that trip when it finally happens. Took Orlando to the vet for his annual exam. My senior boy. We'll get the results of all of his tests and stuff tomorrow. And now I am home. It is about going close to 7 p.m. I need to go check the mail some bills, and water my freaking garden because it is 105 degrees outside. I think I have a little bit of heat exhaustion, honestly, because I'm not feeling super great. But I'm going to take care of those chores, and then if I don't check in tonight, it's because I have heat exhaustion, and I will check in tomorrow. What?
Hello, happy Wednesday. Just checking in here before I teach my night class tonight. Yesterday I did finish Cleopatra and Frankenstein, so I thought I would put it through the compile system here with you, kind of think through the rating as we go. So I'm opening up my little book tracker that I use to keep track of all of my readings. We'll do the compile, and then I will share some quotes with you to see if it's something that you would like. Okay, characters. This book is extremely character driven. It's character heavy and light on plot. Very light on plot. Maybe not very light, but just light on plot, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, Maggie just bumped the tripod, so it wiggled a little bit. The characters were well developed, they were deep, we saw a lot of growth in them, like major growth and change in them throughout the course of the book. I think each character kind of went through their own hero's journey, and 10 stars. 10 stars for characters. Atmosphere. Set in New York, which I love, and in a lot of ways this is a story about New York City. A lot of focus on like the city as an organism, which I love. A lot of time at ritzy artistic parties in New York. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't like the atmosphere wasn't the main focus of the book, but it was there and it was effective. I'm gonna give it an 8. Writing. The writing was good. It's not like the best Litfic writing I've ever read, but it was solid. You know, it was solid. It had some quotes in here that really stuck out to me. And the writing, you know, coalesced to really focus on some big ideas. I'm going to give it a 7. I don't think the writing was actually the strength. I think the strength was the character work. So it's a 7. Plot, as I've said, this is not a very plot-driven story, so it doesn't feel fair to give like plot a low rating because plot was not the purpose. But what I liked about the plot was, as I said, each character kind of went through their own hero's journey in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, when I think about that hero's journey cycle, every main character, with the exception of one who his story I don't think is finished yet, but every main character went through that hero's journey cycle. And when you're doing a character-based novel, I think, you know, something like that is important. Whether it's the hero's journey cycle that you use or some other way to show that character development, that character depth, and that is what kind of propels the plot forward. So that was really well done in this book, and I'm going to give plot an 8. Intrigue. Okay, the first about 200 pages was a very middle of the road read for me. If I was going to tell you like my overall rating for this book at 200 page mark, I would have said it's like a 3.5 because it felt like just a very middle of the road reading experience. But at about page 200, I became invested and I started to really start to feel attached to the characters, and it started to get to me at a more emotional level. I started to be more absorbed in the story, but that it took 200 pages for me to get there, I don't think that's like a great thing in terms of like intrigue. So I'm going to give intrigue a 5. Logic. This had great logic. I mean, it basically tells the story of an alcoholic, a functional alcoholic, and the fallout of that and all of his relationships. And that was all logical. It all made sense. The character choices made sense based on their situation and their backgrounds. And there was one thing, okay, there was one thing that kept bothering me. And that was that the characters kept just running into each other, like out at a bar or out at a museum, or she sees Frank passing by in a taxi cab. And I'm like, y'all are in New York City. The chances of you actually just randomly running into each other in a city that large with that many people are very, very slim. And that kept pulling me out of the story because every time that would happen where they're like, oh, we just ran into each other. Like, did you though? Because all the time that I've spent in New York, that just doesn't happen. So that was one spot that I was like, I don't know that it's that big of a deal, and maybe it just bothers me. But for logic, I'm going to give it a 7. That felt convenient too. A lot of times it propelled the story forward, and like that just felt very convenient, you know, in terms of writing. Anyway, the last category is enjoyment. I enjoyed this. It is not one that I feel like is life-changing. It wasn't one that had my heart beginning to end. I felt invested in it in the last probably the last third of the book. I was invested and I was in it and I wanted to continue and know what was happening with the characters. The characters felt very real to me at that point. Enjoyment I like to think about too, like, is this something I'm going to remember in a couple of years? And I don't know that it is going to be a book that I'm going to, like, 3 years from now, be like, oh yeah, I remember that part in Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I feel like it was a good book to read for the first time and to kind of experience the book. I don't know that it's a book that I would go back and reread, except for like certain scenes and certain passages. So I think I'm going to give overall enjoyment a 6. Okay, and for the cop hot, ooh, okay. For a second there, I thought it was lower than it was. Okay, so for my call pile rating, it ended up with a total score of 7.29, which is 4 stars out of 5. Now, I do want to read you some quotes to see if this is a writing style that you would like. Okay, this is a scene where Frank just gets off the phone with his mom, and he has a very complicated, dysfunctional relationship with his mom. And he says, it's on page 160, Frank hung up the phone a little while after, spun his chair around and around watching the ceiling turn. Talking to his mother bewildered him. He wished he loved her a little more or hated her a little less, something to tip the scale. Instead, he lived in the fraught balance between the two, each increasing the intensity of the other. The more he longed for her, the more disappointed he felt for her, or felt by her. The more disappointed he felt, the more he longed. He tilted his head back, closed his eyes, and exhaled a long fuck. So that was the quote that stood out to me. On page 187, this is just the regular print hardcover, page 187, they're at a benefit auction, and one of the characters is kind of thinking about art and individuality. So it says here, the space was packed with artist types, all dressed to express maximum individualism, yet all looking the same to Anders. You could recognize an art student anywhere in the world, he thought. The quest for individuality had resulted in the opposite, complete predictability. Thought that was good. Okay, and this is a quote that I like related to pretty hardcore. Cleo is out with her friend Quentin, who's struggling with some drug issues, and he's just very like, he doesn't care about social structures. He doesn't care about like social expectations at all. And so he's like flirting with this guy who's married and has a kid on the way and is like clearly not interested in flirting back. And he's just like flirting with him just to be obnoxious. So on page 218, it says, Quentin laughed and Cleo forced herself to join. She could see the couple nervously trying to digest this new information. Cleo was so tired of being the kind of person who made other people uncomfortable. She could see it when she was with Frank, strangers trying to work out their relationship to one another. Too young to be her father, too old to be her partner, and Quentin specialized in making people feel uncomfortable. She used to get a thrill from it, but it felt like a repudiation of her stiff British upbringing. But now it only exhausted her. I am definitely there in my life. I spent a lot of time in my 20s with people that like to push those social boundaries, like go out and just do weird things and make people be like, what are you doing? Like just pushing social boundaries. And just because of my own past, I had never had a rebellious stage ever. So like connecting with these people was sort of my rebellious stage, and they became really good friends of mine, and those friendships lasted until about a couple of years ago when I kind of went through that same process that Cleo is describing, where I was like, this isn't fun for me anymore. Like this is just exhausting for me now. I wish everyone would like mature past this kind of phase. So I thought that quote like really summed up how that feels. I don't know if any of you have ever gone through that, like with a friendship group or with yourself, but that is Cleopatra and Frankenstein. Have you read this? Let me know down below if you've read it. No spoilers for those who have not yet read it. If you do want to chat spoilers, feel free to message me on any of my socials. I'd love to talk to you about this book. I am continuing on this vlog. It's going to be a Litfic focused vlog, and the next book I'm reading is Away by Amy Bloom. And Amy Bloom I heard of from watching the TV show The L Word. One of the characters in that show, my favorite character, Ginny, who's like an unhinged, sad Litfic girly, she talks about Amy Bloom. And so this is her novel, Away. And I'll just read you the synopsis on the back. It says, Away is an unforgettable, passionate, funny, and moving story of a remarkable young woman's quest across America. Panoramic in sweep, epic in scope, and dazzlingly written, Away moves from the gaudy, harsh world of New York's Lower East Side in 1925 to the adventures and pleasures of the jazz underworld and the Alaskan frontier as the unexpected heroine Lillian Leib pursues her daughter in enduring life and love. Sounds like a really interesting synopsis. It's a short little kiss of a book. I'm hoping I can get through this fairly quickly and then pick up a third LitFit book to read before the end of the week. So this is next up. So far today, I've just been working, and my fall term started basically at work, so I'm back to teaching classes. Maggie had a little follow-up vet appointment today. She's had ear infections, so they just checked to make sure everything was healing up, and it is. And that's about it for the day. It's my long work day, so I won't be going out to the barn, and that's the check-in for now. I hope you're doing well. Happy Friday. It is Friday afternoon. This morning I went and took my rental car back to the rental place, and just been working since then. I'm about to go clean stalls, and I wanted to check in because I think I'm going to wrap things up here since it's been a full week. But the last time I talked to you, I was reading Away by Amy Bloom, and I actually DNF'd this yesterday. I did not like the writing style at all. There were some like really traumatic, intense things that happened in here, and I don't know how she managed to do it, but those things were so boring to read about because of the writing style. Like, the writing style was so detached, it felt like the writer didn't care about the story. Like, I didn't like it. I didn't like it not one bit. So I did DNF this one. And then I needed a palette cleanser, so I picked up Heartstopper Volume 3, and you probably are aware of what the Heartstopper books are, but it's a graphic novel, and it is a YA contemporary romance about Nick and Charlie. It's so wholesome, so heartwarming. Their relationship is so sweet. I just love it. And so this third volume, sort of the main focus is this trip they take to Paris, which I loved because I studied abroad in France, and, you know, I have a degree in French, and so it was really fun reading those references to France, to Paris. There was a little bit of the French language in here, which was really fun to read, and I really liked it. I think it'll probably end up being like a 3.5 stars. I haven't put it through Copilot yet. But these Heartstopper books have consistently been 4-star reads for me. So I'm guessing based on how much I like this one, it will also be a 4-star or 3.5 star, right in that range. There is a TV show adaptation of this on Netflix if you're interested. And I love this. Something that I noticed in this volume is that it looks like they actually went with Alice Oseman's actual handwriting for all of the dialogue in here, because it's not like a consistent font. And if it is a font, like, that font really does look like handwriting. This is originally a webtoon, like a web comic you could read online for free. I think it's still up there if you wanted to read it online for free. So it's entirely possible that all of that lettering is hand-drawn. Yeah, that's what I read, and it made me happy because my goal was to get 3 books in this vlog, and I did. 2 out of the 3 were Litfic, so I can call it my Litfic girly vlog, so I'm happy with that. And I will go ahead and wrap things up here. Both of the covers for the books that I read that were Litfic had these really gorgeous, like, art painting style. So in the comments down below, if you just want to let me know that you're here, leave me the art palette emoji. Because I mean, the cover for this is absolutely beautiful. I really like it when book covers use paintings. Like Cleopatra and Frankenstein had a painting, and then this one is this really gorgeous painting as well. So yeah, leave me an art palette if you just want to let me know that you're here. Have you read this? Have you heard of this? Not many people ever talk about this. I mean, I can see why. It's not even like highly rated on Goodreads. When I read some of the Goodreads reviews, like there were a lot of like 2 and 1 star reviews of this. So I wouldn't be surprised if you've never heard of it. But if you have read it, if you've heard of it, let me know down below. I don't recommend it. So that's that. If you've read Heartstoppers Volume 3, chat with me about this down below. And until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.